One of the most common behind the back mistakes with players is not having their footwork down with going into the behind the back and coming out of it. So today we're gonna solve that problem for good. I'm gonna show you how to do every behind the back move possible. And we're gonna do this by showing you all the footwork into the behind the back, all the footwork out of it. And if you think I missed any of them, just leave a comment down below so we'll make sure we get all of them if we also combine the ones in the comments. So for starters, we got two different behind the backs. We got our flat back behind the back where the basketball is just moving like in a regular crossover motion, side to side, just behind our back. And then we've got our wrap behind the back where we're kind of rolling the ball more forward like this. And if you work on using those two different kinds of behind the backs with all the different footwork in the video, you can see how there's gonna be tons of possibilities because there's a bunch of different footwork we're gonna go into real rapid fire. And if you need work on just this basic flat back behind the back or wrap behind the back as far as the hand and dribble motion goes, I'll have a video pinned to the comments. Let's get into the first footwork though. So the first is the 1-2 speed stop. Now you'll wanna work on this pattern going left hand dribbling, right, left, and then going behind the back. And you also want to work on left hand dribbling, left, right footwork pattern. And then of course, everything with the opposite hand, both footwork patterns into that behind the back. As the name implies, it's a quick way to stop. It's great for holding space and not moving too far forward if you know the defender is going to keep moving back. And you can kind of make that decision mid-step. And you'll typically see this with the flat back behind the back. However, you could get into some wraps from it. Next is the hop, where basically both feet are gonna come down on the ground at the same time. You could use it to just quickly get your feet set. But what you'll probably wanna avoid is making a big hop into it. It just keeps your feet off the ground for a long time. And if you're trying to stop quickly, you're really just jumping right into a defender's space. And now any space you would have created for them falling back is kind of gone. So overall, I'd say this one is useful, but it's probably one of the ones you won't use as often unless you know you're quickly gonna try to get into a shot. But again, you wanna make it quick and not cover a whole lot of ground in most instances. Next is the skip. You can do that left hand dribbling, right foot skipping. So right foot comes up, down, and then back onto the left step. That's not a travel. For some reason, I've been hearing that. A lot of people think you can't take a certain amount of steps or hop on the same foot during a live dribble. You can do anything during a live dribble and it's legal. And you can also work on left foot with left hand dribbling and of course, flip everything around. This is good for a setup to try to get some momentum going and see if you got the angle to get here. And then if they cut you off, then you can come back this way. Of course, getting into a flat back or a wrap makes a lot of sense. And if you're gonna skip on the same side foot, it's really good for trying to get some momentum going this way. But again, you can play around with where you're moving with that skip. You can see you can get your fender shifting this way, and if they don't react to it, then you just go into a drive. But you could play around with where you move by starting to skip left foot this direction already. And if the defender doesn't move with you, then you just get into your behind the back. But if they do move with you, then you can come back into a drive. And you can play around with this second foot that's landing after the skip by playing around with the angle, the speed, a whole bunch more. Next footwork to get into it is gonna be the scissors. Basically, you're gonna have your feet staggered or they could be neutral, but you're gonna work on having both feet hit at the same time and switch positions. So one in front and one is behind. And you could play around with this, right? You could have come from here to here, or you could come from here to here. And you can see how that changes the angle, right? If I go here, boom, it's gonna naturally turn my chest a little more this way and my hips more this way, so the ball's probably gonna come forward. But if I'm starting from here and I'm coming here, now you're gonna see how it's gonna pull the ball back more. Much like the hop, you're typically gonna wanna make this quick and make it a little bit lower to the ground and not really move around as much with it. But this one's super crafty, shifty way to quickly change the ball direction in a way that a defender won't see coming. Similar to the last one, but different, is gonna be the scissors step. So for this one, you're gonna start to get halfway into a step and all of a sudden, boom, you're gonna switch positions. So it's a way to catch defenders off guard with your timing because they're expecting the foot to hit here, all of a sudden, boom, this foot comes forward. A lot of times that can kind of stun them into moving that way, and then you can come this way. But you could also do it with this foot and make a tighter angle towards the rim. So you'll notice when the ball side foot's forward, it's gonna end up bringing the ball more forward into that behind the back. If the opposite foot's forward and then you scissors, it's gonna pull the ball back more to the side. That one's a killer, especially if you use some of the footwork after the behind the back that we're gonna get to in a little bit. Next one you'll see a lot on ankle breaker moves, and it's the snatch back. So it's kind of like a speed stop, but you wanna think about taking a longer step and more forward instead of in the speed stop, it's squared. And it's gonna always be with that ball side foot coming forward, and then you're gonna pull the ball back. Key with this is getting into the defender's space nice and tight to them, or even try to get this foot slightly past them. And they're always gonna go flying if you go there because they have to play good defense, boom, pull the ball back. A lot of times you'll have shot, counter moves, and of course, all the footwork options we're gonna get into in a little bit. Next one is an out jab with the ball side foot. So very similar to the snatch back, but instead of stepping more forward, we're gonna step more out to sell a fake this way. And then from there, a lot of times we'll have opportunities this way. Then we got the out jab with the opposite foot. There's a couple ways we can play around with that. We can step into a movement this way or even more sideways and get either A, some momentum going wherever we want to move, or B, use that to sell a fake and then go into some different footwork that we're gonna get into later where we maybe come back that way. And you can also play around with that timing by taking a step out and then coming back in before you get into the behind the back to freeze defenders, or get them to shift that way and then back harder this way when you step back in before you get into the behind the back. And then last but certainly not least, for getting into the behind the back, then we'll get into the ones after the behind the back, is going to be a crossbody step. And you'll notice that kind of happens almost same time as the ball's moving. A lot of coaches say this one is a no-no, but I highly disagree. It just depends on if you've got counter moves from it. So as long as you're comfortable from here, obviously continuing to drive will be pretty easy. But if you have counter moves to maybe pull the ball back between the legs or get into spin moves, there's a lot of things you can do, but you got to make sure you work on it. Otherwise, yeah, the coaches are going to be right that say it is a bad kind of step to take. And to start to dip into the things to do after the behind the back a little bit, you could just square your feet and now you're already in a good position. And a lot of coaches complain about taking this long step with the same side foot as the hand that's dribbling across the body this way. So left foot to right side is kind of null and void. And just to be clear on that, we want to do that left hand, left foot stepping to the right side, or right hand, right foot stepping to the left side. We could do left hand, right foot stepping, but you could see how that kind of puts the ball in front of the defender. However, that could be kind of a more street ball type move that you try to put into the mix. As far as footwork from it, we've got, first of all, the shuffle. That's a super common thing to see people use. So basically, it's just like your defensive shuffle. One foot kicks in, gets about even with this foot, and then that foot kicks out. But we can play around with it. We could do that shuffle before we get into the behind the back. So we're kind of adding one thing in there for the before the behind the back, but you'll more commonly see it after the behind the back, and you can shuffle with the direction of the ball. However, you can also shuffle against the direction of the ball. That's kind of a shifty thing that you can do to kind of throw defenders off, because then they're seeing the ball move this way, but at the same time you're moving this way, and you can start to get a read on the defender and see if they're following your hips and your chest or if they're following the basketball more. And with that shuffle, we got to talk the cross step shuffle. So what that is basically the same as the shuffle, but instead of this foot just coming here and this foot kicking out, we're gonna have this foot kick either behind or in front of this foot. A lot of people say that's bad because you could trip over your own feet, but you won't if you do what I'm gonna show you here. We're gonna have this foot in the air, and while it's in the air, we're gonna pop this foot out. So that way I can't trip. If the foot comes down, then yeah, better chance of tripping. But if I'm here, less chance of tripping, and here, less chance of tripping. And the reason we'd wanna have that down is because we can cover more ground. That puts the defense in a position where they have to respect that movement. And if they don't, then you got an easy driving lane. But if they do overcommit this way, then you can come back this way, maybe create separation for shots, all kinds of stuff. And just to show you with the cross step in front, it would look like that. And just like we talked about before, you could use the against the grain, ball moving that way, and then shuffling this way. And of course, you can mix up cross stepping behind or cross stepping in front. A really shifty thing you can do with the behind the back is after you get the behind the back off whichever hand has the ball, you step out with the opposite foot in this direction. And that's a nice little quick move to freeze defenders or get them shifting that way before you come back this way. And you can do this from a wrap behind the back too. A little bit tougher to do that because you're gonna have to have good air time with that dribble, but it's definitely doable. Or you could go from the behind the back and then take a jab with the ball side foot like this, and then get into another move, or use it as a little stun hezzy. You kind of get that quick jab out with the ball side foot after the behind the back, freeze them, and then go. And if they don't freeze, you can get into a pull-up jump shot by just bringing that back foot forward, or if they overcommit, you can come back this way. Then you also got from this, your scissors. We talked about that before, but we're just changing the timing, right? We're going from that behind the back, scissorsing, and that's gonna set up different options. As you can tell from my angle here, I can go here easily. I could get into a crossover, or I could pull this leg in for a jump shot, or if I scissors here, it's gonna create a different angle where it's probably better to go between the legs if I wanna go this way. Easy to just step through and come this way, or I could even bring that back leg forward if the defender's tight on me to sort of push the ball out in front of the defense, and of course, bring that back leg in for a shot. A few options we got also from the behind the back is that right there, a quick hop. Notice how I make it real small, short, low to the ground, and I get my feet back on the ground as quick as I can, both feet, quickly to get off a jump shot. Usually you aren't gonna see a lot of players use a big hop, and if you were to, it would just make more sense to use a shuffle because you can probably cover more ground, but you can also use it as a quick change of pace thing to get in like a hesitation and crossover, or just a, you know, give yourself options because you're getting both feet on the ground. So now I can step with this foot or this foot equally as easily, and I can get into a drive. It just kind of adds a nice little change of pace. But again, generally the hop after the behind the back is going to be real short, tight, quick movement, feet real low to the ground, and just trying to get them back on the ground fast. Next, we got the cross body step, which can be done after the behind the back, right? You can do it kind of before getting into that wrap behind the back, but you can also do it from like more of a stationary flat back, you know, squat type stance, and then get into it after to sort of delay that movement. And that way a defender won't see it coming, that you're gonna attack right out of it they might just think you're kind of like protecting the basketball, and all of a sudden, then boom, you can go. Good little way again to kind of throw off their pace, their timing, and their expectations. And from this, you can get into all kinds of stuff, right? Basically here, pull that leg in for a jump shot. You could come here, step back and get into a jump shot. Here, square your feet cross. You can come here, pull the ball back with a cross. And of course here, and then just keep going. A couple unexpected things you could do would be going from behind the back into a skip with either hand. You can use that to set yourself up to get some momentum into your next movement. Or if you're doing it from the wrap behind the back, you can almost use that as a way to slow down. So notice how from here, you're using it to sort of speed up and get momentum, but adding a little change of pace and unexpected footwork. But when you do it from the wrap, you're moving a little faster and kind of slowing down. So it can be used to speed yourself up or to slow yourself down. And from that skip, it's good to explode one way. You can use it to change directions this way. And this is all with the ball side so far, or of course, get into a pull-up jump shot. So skip, skip, land, bring this foot in. That would not be a travel as long as your hand's in a legal dribble position like that. So all together from the behind the back would be, that would be completely legal. And if we're skipping with the opposite foot of the hand getting the basketball, so right hand, left foot, it would look like that. I could get into a crossover. That looks very clear. If you just watch it, it just makes sense, right? It just feels like a good move to get into. But you can also use that to drive, get in your shot, all the other stuff that we did with the other leg skipping. Something that's a little more shifty advanced and sort of street ball would be going from that behind the back into a scissor step. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You could do it, that time I did the opposite foot of the hand getting the basketball coming forward and then scissorsing, and you can use that to pull the ball back, get into crossovers, a whole bunch of other stuff. So that would look something like this. And you can also use the ball side foot, so the foot of the hand that's getting the ball from the behind the back and getting into a scissors. Those are gonna be a little more fancy, flashy, street ball-ish. There are times maybe in the game situation where you can use those to set up a defender though with something unexpected.